So there may be a couple of people who don't know who Jim Shooter is. So I'm going to play this quick clip of him basically describing what he does at Marvel and some of his like top things that he has produced, some of the things that he's created and edited over the years. But the dude's an absolute legend. But let's go ahead and listen to what he has to say about a little bit of his career here.
I'm Jim Shooter. I've been in the comics business for 59 years. I think most people know me most as editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics for 10 years. I did some writing while I was editor-in-chief. I wrote Secret Wars. I did the Foundation stories for G.I. Joe and Transformers. I did a lot of other things. I wrote the Avengers. I wrote Daredevil. As a matter of fact, over the course of 10 years, I think I probably wrote at least one of each. So I was a writer too, but my main job was I ran the publishing. I had Stan Lee's old job.
That's pretty dang cool. I love that he's like, yeah, I had Stan Lee's old job.
Yeah, so. And what's even funnier is that when he flew in, I don't think he mentions it here, but like they're like the Mort Weisinger, they're like, wait a minute, you're 14? What the hell? And they had no clue because like how the hell can someone 14 write this well? It's ridiculous.
Well, didn't he even like get his first writing gig because he was just writing in as a fan? Yeah. And then commenting on things, and then they had gotten back. We're like, "Hey, write a script." So he wrote a script, and they never met the guy. Yeah, that's awesome.
I love it. And here he is again in another interview. I don't know if this was at the same convention or if it was something different, but this was posted on Twitter not too long ago. But this blew up. Initially it was posted and someone had said something to the effect of like Jim Shooter spouting lies, but then he took it down later because all the comments were like, no dude, he's spitting straight truth. Like this guy is on fire. Like he needs to talk more. And so this guy, Brett R. Smith, posted this saying Big Jim Shooter speaking truth to power, which got a ton of traction. And it got a lot of people like commenting and reposting it. So let's hear what Jim Shooter has to say in 2024.
So how do you feel about the state of the comic book industry today?
I think they forgot what business they're in. I think that, hey guys, it's supposed to be entertainment, but a lot of it comes out like propaganda. And I don't care if you agree with every word they say. Nobody wants to read propaganda. It's just, it's boring. And an awful lot of retcon going on. And I mean, like I said, I respect the intent of the creators. And Jack Kirby never intended for Thor to be a girl. He never intended. Joe Simon, Jack Kirby, and Stan Lee are spinning in their graves because they turned Captain America into like a Hydra guy or a Nazi. Or that he always was. Well, that's just wrong. Don't do that.
Stay true to the character. Stay true to the character.
Damn. Just like
Chad bombs. I love it. Oh man.
Absolutely dropping truth bombs, man. It's so good. So yeah, Drew, when you first saw this, what was your initial reaction?
I spit up when I was drinking. I loved it. I mean, it was everything he just said is 100% true. And not 90%, not 99%, 100% true. My only wish is that he had said this back in like 2017. Hey, if he had said this back in 2017, holy shit! You want to talk about a Twitter shit fire, whatever? It would have been nuts. 5-alarm shit fire on Twitter. That's what it would have been.
But well, I mean, a shit fart would have been bad too, because it's like one of the farts that you're like, oh no.
He sharted. But no, it's fantastic, and I really hope he can stick around a lot longer. Now granted he's an older guy. Just we need an elder statesman like him around to really be speaking these truth bombs. And I showed you guys that posting. He had a little health scare this past weekend. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping he can really pull through, and because we need this guy, and he honestly he needs to be working again. He needs to be working with someone.
Josh, did you have anything, or did you take away anything from this when you first saw it?
I mean, it's something like, look, this isn't anything new that we've been saying. I feel like for years, even pre-COVID, we've like if you go back and watch some of Wes's Thinking Critical comics aficionados, we always talk about the importance of respecting your characters and having a reverence for their history. And what these new writers today don't understand is you're dealing with a brand. And when I was in writing rooms, and especially if we were dealing with any type of products that were part of something that was larger than us, that had a history or whatever, there was always a conversation of like, you are very lucky that you get to quote unquote play with these toys. Yeah. And yes, you can play with them, and we want you to do what you want to do. We want you to have some creative freedoms, but we need you to understand that you are not going to be in this role forever, and this toy will still be here. And we need this toy to be in a good enough shape that whoever comes after you can still play with this toy. And I get that that's like a childish or juvenile description, but it's very accurate of what it is. Like, your time with this character or this brand is very limited. Yeah, and it's going to need to continue on. We've got Batman and Superman with the histories going back 80 plus years.
Yeah.
And it's sad that we're watching today, these characters are just completely getting destroyed, and it's been so consistent and ongoing at this point that we might actually get to a point where they're ruined.
Yeah, it's like a lot of these creators back in the day, they were told you can bend these characters, you can bend them, because they can bend right back by the end of their stories, better than where they were. But as soon as you break it, you've broken it, and it's hard to come back from that. And a lot of these creators, such as case in point, Tom King, he broke Batman, and Chip Zdarsky right now, I guess he's trying to glue those pieces back together, and it's looking pretty shitty. But that's what happens.
Well, look at Star Wars, like the brand of Star Wars. When you think of the brand of Star Wars, you think of like an impenetrable adamantium shield like that. You never, and no one ever in their lifetime thought that Star Wars would be a low tier brand or like a joke brand or something that would be made fun of. Like, I think for the most part, everyone was like, yeah, Star Wars is like it's something that will last forever. It's something that's bigger than the brand itself. It's like a lifestyle. But now the brand is actually, I would argue, it's damaged. And to your point, Josh, I wonder if these icons, which are Superman and Batman, they're not just heroes, they're not just superheroes, they're not just comic book characters, they're not just art pieces, they are brands, they are icons, they are bigger than their stories. They are like complete ideals, like of hope and optimism and superheroics and sacrifice and courage, nobility. Those things that these characters stand for might be completely broken and damaged at this point, or a little bit down the line, because of how much these characters have been damaged. And I don't know if you go back, right? Like once you've done that to the brand, can you build it back up from what it may have once been? I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I can't remember if this was a Grant Morrison thing or a Jeff Johns thing, but there was a point in time where someone was saying like, oh, at some point you have to change the characters, otherwise the stories are going to get old. And their response back was, no, that is incorrect. Once you change the characters, you're losing your audience. You can have a character and they can, for the most part, remain unchanged. Like some things you're going to have to adapt. Like Batman in the 1940s isn't going to have the same technology that he's got in 2024. Like those are some changes, yes, you make. However, the core of who the character is, the decisions they make, the why they make the decisions that they make, that should not change unless you've had a compounding story that warrants the growth or the change of the character. But the comment was actually about how the way you keep it fresh is you take that character and you make them unchanged in this world that has changed. So the Captain America that you're seeing in the 1960s operating in a world that's in the 1960s is vastly different than a Captain America operating in a world that is the 1980s. Or the late 1980s, where it's a lot darker, a lot more grim. They're saying he's not going to fit as much, but you can actually write a compelling story with that. Take that into the new modern age technology, this lack of religion. It's kind of like what we saw on the Captain America films. Like, this character that stands so much of the American core of what America is supposed to be, you now have that character in a world that's rejecting all of those things. How does he fit in? He stands strong in his identity. And people, look at how people treated these Captain America films. They gravitated towards them. They thought the character representation was good. That's what they wanted to see. They're asking for more of that. And instead, what we have these companies doing, whether it's films or television or comic books, is they're going, well, to fit with the modern times, we need to make this character, A, B, C, and D. And it just completely breaks what was there and what was established previously.
And it completely feels like it's a creatively bankrupt decision when you do have that into the character, or when you do check those boxes for a character, because then at that point it doesn't actually feel like you're doing it for a creative purpose or for a story or for like a larger plot line or something that is going to impact the story. You're now doing it for your own ideology, or maybe your own beliefs, or your own check boxes, or for the company's check boxes or whatever, and it feels really disingenuous, and it doesn't feel creative at all. It feels very corporate and hollow and like shelled out and just completely devoid of anything that what the character first stood for. I think there's a great line in the Avengers film, well, a couple of them, but one that Cap says is he's talking to Agent Coulson, and he says, I don't know, that seems a bit old-fashioned, right? And Agent Coulson says, we could probably use a little old-fashioned right now. And then there's another one where he says, oh, you can't fight him, he's a literal god. And he goes, my god doesn't dress like that. Or there's only one god.
There's only one god, man, and he doesn't dress like that. Or
yes, yeah. And those are classic Cap things to say, right? He comes from a era that was very religious, very conservative. So these are things that he probably speaks on. So I think that's a great point that you had mentioned, Josh. To the propaganda point that he mentioned earlier, I think it kind of falls in line with the character thing.
Yeah.
No one wants to read propaganda. And when you are posed with a question, like classic Star Trek, or when you're posed with a question in these fantastic Uncanny X-Men, Chris Claremont stories, you are posed with both sides of an argument or both sides of a situation or something in culture or society. And you as the reader have to now think and use your creativity and your critical thinking to go, what would I do in this situation? Or what is the right thing here? And that's how you form your beliefs. That's how you form your ideology and your morality and things like that, is because we read stories and we think about what would we do in that situation. But now these creators are going, you will think this way, you will believe this thing, and if you don't, you're a white supremacist, a Nazi, a bigot, an oppressor, a patriarch, all this stuff, right? And it completely demoralizes readers because they don't want to be told how to think or why they are bad because they think a certain way when they're reading their escapist content or their escapist material.
No, what I'll say is saying these things doesn't mean that you can't have diverse characters. You can absolutely have diverse characters. And I know we give this writer a lot of flack, but I'm going to kind of praise her to a degree because I feel like she was on the forefront of trying to have diversity without making it feel like it was forced or shoehorned. But like going all the way back to like the early 2010s, Gail Simone was introducing trans characters and disabled characters, whatever, but they weren't the main character. They played a role. She didn't overdo it. You weren't getting preached to. The character was just there. And in some of these cases, like I look back to, and I don't think this run was good, but she created a character called Porcelain for Secret Six. And it was actually a really, really cool character that could change the density. And again, similar to other characters in other powers, but like she could create her skin to become porcelain and like utilize that and have more mass there and, just the density. And but I don't know, like you can have stuff, but the way we go about it, when you get the Jace Foxes of the world that's becoming Batman, and you have the whole conversation about Black Batman, and now you're turning Bruce Wayne Batman into someone that doesn't think low-level crime is worth his time, and if people are looting places, what are we coming to? Like the whole point of why Batman exists, you're just saying doesn't matter now. It's just nonsense.
I think it's just not just that. It's just the writers now who have a warped perspective on what crime is and justifying justifying people committing crime, petty crime, saying like it's all right, it's okay.
Morality in general.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Not
Guys.
just crime, but just
That KFC, it wasn't on fire because of arson. It was on fire because we had peaceful protests.
Yeah, mostly
super peaceful.
Yeah,
mostly.
Summer of love, baby. Summer of love.
Yeah, summer of love. It's all love. All right. Well, I think the last thing I'll probably say about this is, I hope, like you, to your point, Drew, I hope that Jim Shooter sticks around, because I do think that he needs to be a voice of reason in this industry. I think if you were to say this, 10 years ago, we really could have used it. But he would have stirred up, like you said, just an immense amount of hate. He would have been laughed out of the industry. He would have been fired. But now, I don't want to say it's safe to say it, but it's a little bit more acceptable now to say.
More acceptable. And it's
it's
kind of late, and it's just like, oh man, this would have had such a stronger punch 5 years ago. But yeah.
Well, because I mean, now that everything's burned to the ground, now that comics aren't really doing great, the characters are shells of what they used to be. The fans have moved on to manga, or they've moved on to movies, or tabletop gaming, or they moved on to back issues, like whatever it is. The fans have moved somewhere else, and we're just not seeing the same interaction and the same excitement that we are with normal, regular weekly floppies and monthly floppies. So. It is. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Josh.
No, I was gonna say it's not even just the fans; the talent have moved
Yeah.
on.
Well, yeah. It's actually, that's true. So because of all that, though, if you're coming out and saying this, great. I love that, but it may be a little bit too late. We've already lost a generation. We've already lost a generation of fans and creators, like you said, Josh. So, though I really love that Jim Shooter said this, and I think that he is an incredible voice in the industry, and I hope that he speaks out more about this. We may be a little bit too late on this one, but I don't know. You guys got anything else about this one?
Yeah, I don't think it's too late. I mean, the pendulum's gonna swing its swing. But sure. I think it was one of those weird situations where, if you had this opinion and you spoke it, you stood up and you got on your soapbox to verbalize how you felt or what you thought or what you were witnessing. Companies, along with the loud Twitter psychos, companies would back the minority, the psycho people that are yelling from the rooftop, and go like, oh yeah, no, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this. And then, year after year after year of losing money, now you're seeing companies, when these loud psychos are going, oh, you can't do that, you can't say that, companies are just going, they're pretending like they didn't see it, they don't know what's going on, who said what, I wasn't aware of that, like, are we sure? And that's letting people speak freely, but they're also kind of quietly, as we've seen with Marvel and the MCU, like Kevin Feige's quietly firing all these activist people and putting legitimately talented people in these roles where they should have been to begin with. And that's not to say that these activist people shouldn't be in these roles, but we took people with like barely any experience, barely any history, and that were making their mission in life overtake what their job is supposed to be. Instead of just letting them come in and kind of get tutored under these people that know what they're doing and understand what they're doing. They just like, here's the keys to the kingdom, have fun. Try not to shit and piss on everything, I guess. Like,
brutal. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Josh. So, the pendulum, I hope, swings back. I don't want it to swing so far the other direction to where it's just, it's completely gate kept from people with different thoughts or ideas on different things. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that, because right now it's being gate kept from people with different thoughts and ideas, but just on a different side, right? So I just don't want propaganda, and I want our heroes to go back to what they stood for, and I think that hopefully when that pendulum swings back, that's ultimately what we see, and not so much like a revenge story where it's like, now that we're in charge, right? But even still, I don't even think that, because it's going to have to start from the top. And if it doesn't get wiped out from the top, then we'll never see change in the industry. But,